In 2015, Volkswagen was one of the largest automobile manufacturers in the world by sales, sitting comfortably at the top of the global auto food chain. At its peak that year, Volkswagen Group's market valuation hovered around 250 billion euros, give or take depending on the month and market mood. In today's money, adjusted loosely for inflation and purchasing power, that valuation would comfortably push past 325 billion euros. To put that into perspective, that kind of money could buy you entire luxury hotel chains across Europe, bankroll multiple Formula One teams for decades, and still have change left over for spare parts. However, fast forward to today, and Volkswagen's valuation sits closer to 46 to 54 billion euros, sometimes dipping lower depending on market sentiment. It is one of the most dramatic value erosions in modern corporate history, especially for a company that once embodied German engineering, industrial discipline, and long-term thinking. So what happened? How did Volkswagen lose its way? To understand this, you have to rewind back. You see, for decades, Volkswagen was the definition of scale done right. The company owned an empire of brands that covered almost every corner of the automotive market. Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche, Skoda, Seat, Bentley, Lamborghini, Bugatti, Ducati, Scania, gasoline cars, diesel cars, luxury cars, trucks, buses. In fact, if it moved on wheels in Europe, chances were Volkswagen had a hand in it. On paper, this portfolio was a strategic masterpiece because it means shared platforms, shared engines, shared components, and shared purchasing power. In business terms, it was the ultimate economies of scale machine. The MQB platform alone was designed to underpin tens of millions of vehicles across brands, body styles, and price points. Each incremental car was supposed to be cheaper to produce than the last, squeezing margins upward while competitors struggled to keep up. For a long time, this worked brilliantly. So brilliantly that Volkswagen became obsessed with process optimization, modularization, and cost efficiency. Engineers and executives alike believed that if the systems were perfect, success would follow automatically. But here is the first crack in that perfect foundation. Volkswagen optimized itself for a world that was no longer static. The auto industry was changing, but Volkswagen's internal logic was still rooted in the late 20th century, when mechanical excellence mattered more than software agility, when regulatory compliance could be engineered around, and when scale itself was the ultimate competitive advantage. This mindset set the stage for Dieselgate. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Now, by the early 2000s, Volkswagen had made diesel engines central to its global strategy. In Europe especially, diesel was marketed as cleaner, more efficient, and environmentally responsible. Volkswagen invested heavily in diesel technology, branding it as clean diesel and pushing it aggressively in the United States, a market historically skeptical of diesel passenger cars. The business logic made sense on the surface. Diesel engines offered better fuel economy and lower CO2 emissions per kilometer, which helped Volkswagen meet European climate targets without radically redesigning its vehicle lineup. The problem, however, was that nitrogen oxide emission standards, particularly in the US, were far stricter than what Volkswagen's diesel technology could realistically meet at scale without sacrificing performance or cost. Faced with this constraint, Volkswagen made a choice that revealed something deeply wrong inside the organization. Instead of stepping back and questioning the strategy, engineers developed defeat devices, software designed to detect emission tests and temporarily reduce emissions output. This made their cars pass regulatory tests while polluting far more in real-world driving. From a business perspective, this decision is astonishing, not because it happened, but because it was allowed to happen. Engineers were expected to deliver results, not ask uncomfortable questions. And this backfired, beginning their long journey towards decline. When their defeat devices were exposed in 2015, in what was later named as Dieselgate, The immediate costs were staggering. Volkswagen had to pay tens of billions of euros in fines, settlements, recalls, and legal fees. Many of its executives resigned, and trust evaporated instantly. And we all know that in business, trust is an intangible asset, and once impaired, it raises the cost of everything. Regulators scrutinize you more closely, customers hesitate longer, and investors demand higher risk premiums. But there's something worth mentioning here. In as much as Dieselgate derailed Volkswagen, it wasn't the last straw that broke the camel's back. After Dieselgate, Volkswagen publicly committed itself to becoming a leader in electric vehicles, and massive investments were announced. Billions were poured into new platforms like MEB, battery factories, and software divisions. On earnings calls and press releases, the language was bold and confident. Volkswagen would out-Tesla, outscale everyone, and leverage its manufacturing muscle to dominate the EV era. However, ambition alone does not guarantee execution, especially when the organization making the pivot is still structurally optimized for a different world. One of Volkswagen's biggest miscalculations was assuming that electric vehicles were simply combustion cars with batteries. In reality, EVs are software-defined products. The powertrain is simpler, but the digital architecture is vastly more complex. Tesla understood this from the beginning, but Volkswagen did not. To catch up, it created a dedicated software unit called carmaker, tasked with developing a unified operating system for all Volkswagen brands. In theory, this was a rational move, but in practice, it exposed just how unprepared Volkswagen was for software-centric competition. Carmaker missed deadlines repeatedly. Their software was buggy, incomplete, and incompatible across brands. Entire vehicle launches were delayed because the software wasn't ready. The Porsche Macan EV, Audi models, and even flagship Volkswagen vehicles were pushed back by months or years. These delays had cascading financial consequences, which includes lost revenue, higher development costs, strained dealer relations, and eroded confidence among investors. What made it more worse was that these failures weren't isolated technical issues. They were organizational failures. Volkswagen tried to build a Silicon Valley-style software culture inside a rigid, hierarchical industrial giant, and the two simply did not mesh. To understand why this mattered so much, here's a simple experiment. Imagine two companies tasked with building the same product. One is structured around fast iteration, decentralized decision-making, and cross-functional teams. The other is structured around approvals, committees, and layered reporting lines. Even if both hire equally talented engineers, the first company will adapt faster when assumptions prove wrong. The second will spend more time explaining delays than fixing them. Volkswagen was the second company trying to compete in a first-company market. Another structural burden was Volkswagen's governance model. Unlike most publicly traded companies, Volkswagen is heavily influenced by the state of Lower Saxony, which holds a significant voting stake, and by powerful labor unions that sit on the supervisory board. This model provided stability for decades, protecting jobs and ensuring long-term investment. But in a period of rapid technology disruption, also slowed decision-making. As margins in traditional combustion vehicles came under pressure and EV profitability lagged behind expectations, Volkswagen found itself squeezed from both ends. Combustion cars still paid the bills, but regulatory pressure made them less viable long-term. EVs represented the future, but they were expensive to develop and not yet delivering the same returns. This created a classic innovator's dilemma, amplified by Volkswagen's sheer size. When you sell millions of cars a year, even small strategic missteps translate into billions in lost value. To make matters worse, China, which was previously Volkswagen's jewel in the crown, became another source of anxiety. For years, Volkswagen dominated the Chinese market through joint ventures and strong brand recognition. But Chinese consumers moved faster toward EVs than Volkswagen anticipated, and domestic manufacturers were better positioned to meet their preferences. Volkswagen's software lag and slower EV rollout hurt its competitiveness. Losing ground in China threatened the financial foundation that funded Volkswagen's global ambitions. Through all of this, the company struggled with identity. Was it a volume manufacturer chasing scale, or a technology company chasing innovation? Internally, this question produced friction rather than clarity. Externally, the market sensed hesitation, and in business, hesitation is expensive. In hindsight, Volkswagen did not lose its way overnight. It followed a path that once led to dominance and assumed that path would always work. It trusted processes over people, scale over speed, and targets over truth. And when the world changed, these same strengths became constraints. Dieselgate shattered trust. The EV transition exposed structural rigidity, and software failures revealed cultural blind spots. And yet, the most striking part of Volkswagen's story is not that it stumbled, but that it struggled to recognize why. The company kept announcing bold strategies while underestimating the internal transformation required to execute them. It treated disruption as a project rather than a redefinition. This is how great companies lose their way. Thanks for watching. For more interesting business videos like this, subscribe to our channel and check out our earlier videos. If you'd like to know how many unprofitable apps keep surviving, check out this video on your screen right now.